Hello and welcome back to the fight. Here recapping semifinal action from the Men's World Championship happening in Herning, Denmark and Stockholm, Sweden. So we'll hop into today, starting with the scores from today's games, starting with a 6-2 victory for the U.S. over Sweden. Now, this was a game I would say for the most part kind of got decided early. And, for the Swedes, it was a game that you kind of needed a key save. And as much as you can't blame the goaltending in this game because there were a lot of offensive chances from the U.S. and really good chances at that, you kind of needed some of those saves, especially early in this one where, for the U.S., they get the early 2 goals in the first. You follow that up with another 2 goals in the second. Those goals, each one of them, for the most part, in my eyes, the goaltender for Sweden should have saved. But in the same respect, they were kind of point-blank chances that the defense were kind of lost in coverage, and that's why they were generating those chances. But for both sides, that's just kind of the way that this game went. And then, the U.S. goes up 4-0, and it's like, oh, wait a second. Where have I seen that one before? Where have I seen that in? Oh, wait a second. I've already seen this team blow a 4-goal lead, and that was against Norway earlier in the tournament. Sweden scores 1 goal with Nylander all alone on the back door. Then Elias Lindholm scores a goal from the slot, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, wait a second. I have seen this before. But it did not last long because the U.S. scored shortly after. 5-2, and then with the eventual 6th goal with the empty net from behind the goal line. And that really sort of summed this game up where, for the U.S., they got on the board early and they got on the board often. That's exactly what we kind of talked about in our previewing the next day recap video yesterday or 2 days ago. It was about for this U.S. team, early, often, and always, and they'll be fine. And they did that in this game. For Sweden, it was about trying to keep the U.S. off the board, especially early. Unfortunately, they couldn't find the back of the net themselves. Swayman did play really well for the U.S., but it was one of those games that the Swedes just needed that breakthrough to turn the tide in the game. But unfortunately, it became too little too late for them, and they'll lose this one 6-2. Sweden will head back to the bronze medal game, and for the U.S., they'll move to a gold medal game, and we'll talk about the historic parts of that later in the news. But a very historic win for the U.S. advancing to a gold medal game. So for the U.S., a big 6-2 victory. They'll play for the gold. For Sweden, an unfortunate loss on home ice today. They will play for the bronze against the Danes, who we'll talk about now, with Switzerland 7, Denmark 0. And this game, I think, was, for me at least, the least surprising game of the day. You look at the way these two teams have played all tournament. Credit to Denmark. They knocked Canada off, but they really shouldn't have. And once again, hockey's played on the ice and not on paper, but on paper, Switzerland and Denmark do not match up at all. And we've seen what Switzerland has done all tournament long against these teams, where they have dominated the weaker competition and really not given them anything to play for. And that's exactly what happened in this game. And you look at the first 3 goals in the first period, all sort of fluky-esque goals, but they were goals that were, kind of goal scorer goals, if you will. They're not pretty stuff, but they're grindy, bank it off kind of shots. So for Switzerland, they played the exact game they needed to. They got on the board early, they got on the board often, scoring 7 times, a full touchdown at that. And I think for the Danes, today was sort of a reminder of where they are at this tournament. And, credit to them. They beat Canada, right? I know I'm Canadian. I know anything I say about Denmark here is going to sound with a little bit of anger and aggression. But, for the Danes, they won their game that matters. They beat Canada. They beat Germany to get into the quarters. They got to play against Canada on home ice in Denmark, proceeded to win that game, forcing them into the semifinal. And I think now you're going to go play against the Swedish team that we've seen the Swedes play every version of themselves at this tournament. And honestly, they have a shot at this winning a bronze medal. Is it a great shot? No, but there is a shot there. So it'll be interesting to see for this Danish team to see what they come out with tomorrow, because if they play kind of like they did today, they will get beat. And I think they are going to have to find ways to generate offense, especially against the Swedes, who are going to make a fair number of mistakes. So I'll be curious to see kind of what happens tomorrow. Obviously, the Danish goaltender Dicko was removed, I think, halfway or 2/3 or whenever he was removed from the game, to sort of conserve energy for this one. And I think in the same respect. I mean, Erson went in the starting the third period. So for both these teams, for Sweden, for the Danes, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next, because I do think you look at the way these two teams match up. Sweden, yes, they should win this game handedly, but all tournament long, we've been proven otherwise by this Swedish team. They have played some very good games. You look at the Slovak game, I'd argue is probably their best game against some of the weaker competition. But then in the same respect, you look at them playing a team like Austria, where they should have lost that game, and they rallied back at the very end, to win that game 4-2 in regulation. But I think it was 5 or 6 minutes left, and they scored 3 goals in that span. So for the Swedes, it's about playing a full game, and we'll preview that game coming up in a little bit. But for the Danes, as much as today is a hard loss to take, there's signs moving forward that you can still do well at this tournament and turn some heads. So for Denmark here, an unfortunate loss for the Swiss. They looked really good again today, and the one thing we've learned about this Swiss team is they're going to provide a very, very consistent effort. And whether it's on the defensive side, the offensive side, they play well, and they play well a lot. And you look at who they're going to go up against, with this tough U.S. team, and I don't see why they can't beat them. Coming into this tournament, this wasn't the Swiss team I was expecting to see, and not necessarily in the fact that, the players are performing better or worse. But for me, it's the consistency they've shown that's really impressed me. And I mean, today was no different with the 7-0 win, but they play well, and every single line of theirs play well. So there's no real blemishes in my eyes on the Swiss team. And now it's just about putting forward at least one more really well-played, consistent game for a chance to win gold. So that will do it for our scores. We'll now move over to the news, and we'll start here with Sweden with a long time. And for Sweden, they haven't made it to the gold medal game since 2018, where they did win gold, but it's been a while for them. And yes, you can take out 2020 as a year, but still, that's 2019, that's 2021, 2, 3, 4, and now 5. That's 6 years now without seeing Sweden in the gold medal game. And I think you look at the impact of that, and as much as, yes, it doesn't matter a whole ton, it does matter a little bit. And I think the Swedish team, especially on home ice this year, we're looking for that opportunity to do it on home ice and to make the gold medal game and win the gold medal. And now, it feels like yet another tournament where this Swedish team just hasn't lived up to their expectations. And this was arguably one of the best Swedish teams we've seen at this tournament from years past. Unfortunately, they could not get the job done today. They will go to the bronze medal game for a chance to, at the very least, win a medal. So there is something there. But then we'll talk now about the U.S. We talked about Sweden with a long time, for the U.S. even longer. And the last time, the U.S. made the gold medal, or played in a gold medal game, was 1934. For reference, they lost that game to Canada. This was the Canadian flag back then, right? Like, it wasn't even the red, white, and maple leaf that you're so accustomed to seeing. It was that Canada team that beat this U.S. team. So, for the U.S., and obviously not to take away from it, because there was a big-time tournament change and a format change, which is why it was so long ago. But for the U.S., it's a chance to turn the tide at these tournaments. And for the U.S., they haven't won a gold medal since 1960. And that was an Olympic year for this tournament. So what they used to do, of course, was kind of combine the Men's Worlds and the Olympics in the same year. So really, the last time they won this tournament on its own was 1933. And I think you look at that, that's a very long time ago. That's, 92 years ago was the last time they made it. They won the gold at this kind of tournament. So I think there's a lot for the U.S. to play for. And obviously, you look at their success from this year, and especially at these tournaments where they won the juniors, they won the women's worlds. They're looking to win the men's world now. And I think you also throw in the Four Nations thing, not officially double IHF, but definitely part of it as well. And I think heading into an Olympic year, that's the kind of trends you want to see. And for the U.S., it's a statement game against the Swiss, where a lot of the best Swiss players are on this year's Worlds team. Yes, they lost Hischer. Yes, they're missing Yossi, but the majority of that core will be the team heading to Milan. And for the U.S., I think they want to make a real big statement where Not a lot of their top players are at this tournament, but I do think that if they can win this one, it's a real big step for them heading into Milan. So for the U.S., lots to play for. Obviously, it's been a very long time since they've been at that stage in this tournament. Now we'll see if they can get the job done. But speaking of gold, now let's talk about Switzerland. They've never won gold at this tournament, and I think, for the Swiss, this is their moment, and this is their year to do it. And you look back the last couple of years where we've seen Switzerland kind of buzzing around that gold medal. Even look back to last year where the Czechs knocked them off in the gold medal game. I thought in many ways that game really could have went either way, but the Czechs played their game. They played on home ice, had the home crowd behind them, and they ended up winning that game. And I think you look at kind of the way that this tournament has played out for the Swiss. They've been arguably not only the most consistent, but one of the best teams at this tournament. And I think you look at their game against the U.S. In the prelims, 3-0 win. If they can play the way they did and they can get hot goaltending from Gioni, this Swiss team might be this year's team to do it. And I think as much as they never won gold, there's always a chance for history. And this year's tournament, I think, could be that historic factor for the Swiss team. And speaking of history with the Danes, who have never won a medal at this tournament. And, we kind of do the whole stretch where we have for Sweden a long time, for the U.S. it's been even longer, for the Swiss it's been a never gold cycle, and for Denmark, they've never even won a medal at this tournament. I think, you look at that win against Canada on home ice, how big of a win that was. But now they're guaranteed a chance to play for a medal, and they'll play for a medal against the Swedes. And I think for the Swedes, they've shown aspects of times where they can't quite play their style against some of the weaker teams. And I think for the Danes, this is a vital opportunity to win a medal, sort of turn the tide of Danish hockey, if you will. And I think that momentum we'll see carry forward, not only future tournaments, but, onwards of that, and especially in future generations as they're watching these tournaments. Big step for this Danish hockey team. They have a real big opportunity tomorrow against Sweden. I'll be curious to see what kind of game they come out with, because I think it might be tighter than most people might think. But it also wouldn't surprise me to see the Swedes blow the living daylights out of them, because that's also a possibility. So for the Danes, never a medal, but that will do it for our news. And I'll flip over to our playoff picture, where we will see, of course, Switzerland and the U.S. in the gold medal game, Finland, Sweden and Denmark in the bronze. And, this tournament has been one that has turned a lot of eyes, and it's been very difficult to predict. You can more than welcome to go check out our prediction video we did at the start of this tournament, because those predictions have ended very poorly. I think, if memory serves, I had Canada and Czechia in the gold. I had the U.S. and I believe it was Sweden, maybe in the bronze. But this tournament has kind of turned on its head, and in a good way. And that's part of the fun of hockey, is no game's ever played on paper. So as much as you might look at it and say, oh, this is going to be their year, or that's that year, and it's never really that. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about these kind of tournaments, is it's anyone's game. And I look at this Swiss-US game, it's going to be a good one. And, the Swiss have been one of the better teams. The U.S. have also been a very good team. They've won some big games that matter. And you look at their game against the Czechs, they can play the way they did against the Czechs. I think that they will likely win this game. But for Switzerland, if they continue to play the way they've been playing at this tournament, I think they'll be just fine. And you're going to look for some hot goaltending. And the Swiss can have their goaltending going, firing on all cylinders, if you will. They are very likely to win this tournament. But if they find some gaps, the U.S. can find some ways into the net, all of a sudden this tournament could be very different. So for the U.S., find some goals, going to be important for them. As for Switzerland, continue to play defensive hockey, find the opportunities which presents themselves, because the U.S. will make a lot of mistakes tomorrow. It's just about capitalizing on them. And then to the bronze medal between Sweden and Denmark. And this game, it could go either way. It honestly could. And I think as much as the Swedes are going to be on home ice and have that home ice advantage, I think for the Danes, they will get a little bit of that home side too. They look at how close these two countries are. As much as, they're not, and the Swedes would have the original tickets, I do think that they would have expected to be in the gold. So who knows what tickets are available for the Danes to come down and invade the Swedish barn. but it could be very interesting. So for the Danes, playing their style of hockey, it's shown to be working. You play defense first, especially against the Swedes. If they start getting pretty, don't be surprised to see the Danes really capitalize on that, finding offense going the other way. And all of a sudden, you look at guys like Iihf, who is a late addition to this team, could be the driving factor of a Danish win here. As for Sweden, play your game, stop making mistakes, pick up good goaltending, and they'll be just fine. But if they start to struggle, they start being too pretty like we've seen earlier in this tournament, going for the stats, and then your goaltending kind of gets a little weak, this game could get interesting. And it honestly could. And I know I've been at this tournament kind of going back and forth, but this game I think really could go either way. You're either going to see the Danes pull it off in a very tight margin, or you're going to see the Swedes blow them out from the very first puck drop. So lots to play for tomorrow for these two teams. Obviously, it's a medal game, so it's going to be a good game, and we'll see which teams come out on top. We'll flip over now to the schedule for tomorrow, where we'll see on May 25th at 9:20 a.m. between Denmark and Sweden. This is going to be a good game, and honestly, if I had to predict, I'd say it's probably going to be a blowout for Sweden. But I could see it going either way. Danes win, 2-1, 3-2, and overtime overtime or whatever. Wouldn't surprise me. For the Swedes, if they're going to win, you're likely going to see it, 4-1, 5-1, 6-2, right? Those kind of more or less blowout games. It's just going to come down to how well the goaltending is for the Danes and what kind of effort the Swedes play. And then to the second game, you've already seen this matchup at this tournament, a 3-0 victory for the Swiss coming up at 2:20 p.m. We've already seen the result, right? A 3-0 win for the Swiss. Now it's going to be time to see what the response is from the U.S. They have the potential at this tournament. They really do. But time will tell whether or not they're going to be that team at this tournament that kind of make their way through without having too many problems. They haven't played, a real good quality team in a little bit. They went against Austria, Denmark, Kazakhstan was their last game. They didn't look great against Kazakhstan, but, those were their last three games. And now it's about, for the U.S. and for the Swiss, they have to adapt to each other's playing styles. And for the U.S., it's been a little bit tougher of a road. Look at their game against Finland, and then they played, of course, the Swedes in the semis. They're ready to go against the better teams at this tournament. We'll see which team from both sides come out tomorrow, but it should be a good one. And one more thing before we do end today. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. I don't do this a ton, but I would really appreciate if you do hit the subscribe button. We're almost there. It's been a crazy tournament. I think we're up over 300 subscribers so far from the start of this tournament. So if you have not already, please do subscribe. It really helps the channel out. It helps you find this content more easily. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like for this, consider subscribing. Tell all your friends and comment down below your thoughts on the semifinal action from the Men's World Championship.